As a divorce coach for men, I've had the opportunity to see hundreds of men find happiness and purpose after divorce. I've even seen them find love. And I'm not talking about meaningless sex. I'm not talking about a guarded relationship without trust. I'm talking about finding real partnerships where they feel safe, loved, and respected. So in today's video, I'm going to show you some examples, some of those men that I've seen make this transformation so that you know that it is in fact possible for you as well. I'm also going to show you how to get there. I'm going to give you the one essential strategy that every man I've ever seen make this transition has used. And make sure that you stick with me till the end of this video, because at the end, we're also going to talk about the 4 phases of healing that you have to move through as you apply this strategy to find that purpose and happiness for yourself. When you're in the darkness, when you're in the early stages of this, it is almost impossible to believe that there is light at the end of the tunnel. So I want to just share a couple of quick examples with you to give you some hope that there is peace, there is happiness in your future. This is one of my favorites. This man just says, "My guilt and shame have vanished. Negative self-talk is at an all-time low." The next one is from a client about 2 months into working with me inside of my coaching program, Better Beyond Divorce. He said, "I don't think my goals have changed. I do think I have some added goals. I have a goal to find love again with a woman or partner. 4 months ago, I couldn't see any remote possibility of having a thought like that." This is from a pretty new fellow in my Better Beyond Divorce community. He says, "I don't even recognize the person that I was 6 months ago. I'm happy and thriving." And I love his advice also. He says, "Best to you, brother, you will thrive again." If you don't know me yet, I'm Rachael Sloan. I'm a life coach and a master NLP practitioner, and I'm also the founder of a coaching program called Better Beyond Divorce. I work with separated and divorced men because they are so often left behind. As a society, we offer so much support. We give so much benefit of the doubt to women. There's so many resources for them. And so many of the resources that are out there to support women are actually vilifying men. And at the same time, we've got so many men that are struggling with incredible amounts of emotional pain, suicidal thoughts, overwhelm, depression, anxiety, despair during separation and after divorce. And because a lot of men, most men, have learned to cope with grief, either by suppressing it or by turning it into anger, those reactions also cause them to get left behind even more, because it either looks like they're okay when inside they are definitely not, or they just seem angry and aggressive and people respond defensively instead of seeing through to the agony that they're in under the surface. I have had the great privilege of walking this divorce recovery path with several hundred men at this point, and I've learned so much from them. That's why I can share this strategy with you today, because it's the very same strategy that I've seen all of these men use to find that purpose, to find happiness, and to find love after divorce. Before we jump into the strategy, I want to give you one example of finding love, because that part can be so hard to imagine when you're in the thick of it. For a lot of men, there's a lot of betrayal, a loss of trust. This is the person that you had children with, you shared a life with, you spent decades together, you were envisioning a future together, and now she's just walking out and not even giving it a chance much of the time. So I want to share with you the example of Tommy. He is a man who worked with me a while back now. I guess it's probably been about 1.5 years. And he had a really difficult situation. The whole time we worked together, he was still living with his soon-to-be ex-wife and their teenage kids. There was a lot of alcohol involved on her side, a lot of emotional abuse, a lot of verbal abuse. It was very uncomfortable. And when I first met Tommy, he said he didn't know what was happening, but he was just shaking. He'd find himself just shaking throughout the day. It was affecting his ability to work, to sleep. He was really, really struggling with the stress and the pain and the grief, and he didn't even have the words to give to those emotions. But then this last year at Christmas, I got an email from Tommy, and it was really beautiful. It was mostly just telling me how well he was doing. And he was also talking about this amazing woman that he had started dating that he did not expect, and telling me how from day one, it was so different from how it ever was with his ex-wife, because they could communicate about everything. And so all of the little things that used to get swept under the rug or suppressed and then blow up later, there was none of that in this new relationship, because the communication right from day one was so open and vulnerable. And then I got another email from him this spring, I think it was in April, announcing that they were getting engaged. So what was it? What did Tommy do What did these other men do that allowed them to make this change, to have this different kind of relationship, to find purpose, energy, happiness post-divorce? The strategy is very simple. They focused on improving their relationship with themselves. And now if you're saying, Rachel, what the hell does that mean? Don't worry, I'm with you. Most of the men I work with are like, look, I've heard all about self-love and self-awareness, but those terms are really vague and nobody can tell me what they actually mean. So let me tell you what I mean when I say improving your relationship with yourself. Your relationship with yourself boils down to really just two things. One, how do you talk to yourself in your mind? And two, how do you deal with your emotions? Your external relationships, your relationships with everyone else, will always mirror your relationship with yourself. So for example, if you deal with emotions by suppressing them, then your wife and your kids are probably going to tell you that your behavior feels controlling or insensitive or even abusive at the extreme end. If you use negative self-talk to motivate yourself, then your friends and family are probably going to find themselves feeling really uncomfortable or laughing awkwardly when you make jokes about them that are more cruel than funny. You have good intentions, right? Your intentions might be the best in the world. You want to connect with these people, you love them, you care about them, you're doing things in their best interest, often sacrificing yourself, your needs, your desires for them, but it doesn't matter. Because the way you relate to yourself is determining the quality of your relationships to other people. And if that relationship with yourself isn't healthy, then your external relationships aren't going to be healthy either. Most people, not just men, but women too, tend to relate to themselves in general in one of two ways, either through tyranny or anarchy. If you relate to yourself through tyranny, you are in control. Right? You are suppressing your emotions. You are probably pretty aggressive, self-critical, self-judgmental in your mind. You use a lot of that negative self-motivation, negative self-talk. You tend to be very critical with yourself, but it works, right? You don't let your emotions take control of things. You're probably very successful in your career. You get things done. You keep things together. You hold it together for everyone else, right? But you are governing yourself through tyranny. You are relating to yourself through tyranny. You are suppressing what you feel, and you are using aggressive inner self-talk or a lot of self-judgment to get things done. Anarchy is a little bit different. When you are self-governing through anarchy, you really aren't governing at all. Whatever is coming up inside you is hijacking your system. Right? And so you might be familiar with this, especially during the divorce process, with emotions like anxiety and anger. Right? Anxiety comes up and it is so overwhelming that it hijacks your brain. And now all you can think about is the future and the uncertainty and how you don't know what you're going to do and you don't know how you're going to deal with this and what's going to happen next. Right? Maybe you can't focus at work. Maybe you're like Tommy and you find yourself shaking throughout the day. Or anger is another one that loves to hijack us. Anger will come up and lash out, and all of a sudden we're saying and doing things that we don't really mean, but man, in the moment we sure do. And later when we come out of those emotional states, it does feel like we were somebody else. And you might recognize anarchy in your ex-wife. Right? This is a common pattern I see with a lot of my clients, that their ex-wives were really governed by their emotions. And it leaves you as the partner, especially if you self-govern with tyranny and some emotional suppression, really wondering who this person is, because it seems like they have so many different faces and they can be a different person moment to moment. That's because a different emotion is governing them moment to moment and they behave very differently. But tell me, do you really want to live your entire life under either system? Do you want to live under the rule of a tyrant? Do you want to live in absolute anarchy where things change constantly and whoever happens to be in charge in the moment does whatever they feel like? Take a step back, if you would, with me, and imagine somebody that you admire, maybe a leader that you admire, somebody that you would gladly follow or support, somebody that you would trust. What kind of qualities would that person have? The leaders that most of us admire and respect are the leaders that treat us with respect and compassion. They trust us, they trust our intentions, and they'll ask our opinion and genuinely consider our input before they make decisions as a leader. If you take an honest look inside yourself, at your brain, at your thoughts, how respectful and compassionate are the thoughts that are usually in your mind? Not towards other people, but towards yourself. When you're talking to yourself in your head, how respectful and compassionate is the language that you're using? And when you're handling your emotions, when you consider how you deal with grief, with anxiety, with anger, with fear, how often do you slow down and really listen to the messages that those emotions are showing you or sharing with you before you make a decision about how to respond? If you are not being a respectful leader inside your own brain, a respectful leader of yourself, then you're likely either suppressing really important parts of yourself or you're getting hijacked by every strong emotion that comes along. You can't build healthy external relationships in either of those states. Learning to become a better internal leader, that's exactly what my client Bob did. And let's take a look at what happened for him. So when Bob learned to self-govern, when he improved his relationship with himself and became a respectful, compassionate man to himself and his own thoughts and in how he dealt with his own emotions. Don't forget, that's what we're talking about. How do you talk to yourself in your mind? How do you deal with what you feel? When Bob became more respectful and compassionate towards his emotions and in his thoughts, what he found is this. He says, I never would have thought I would be where I am today from a year ago. Last year, my life was in shambles, all of my dreams broken. Wife left with the kids back to Indiana, had to leave the job I enjoyed. Right? And there was a lot more going on for Bob as well. There was infidelity on his wife's side and a lot of painful, complicating factors, 2 young kids. And yet, here's Bob. My life is now great. I spend quality time with my children doing things with them I've always wanted to do. I have the perfect size, cozy house. I have an awesome relationship with an amazing new woman. I've shared all of my darkest actions and thoughts, and she accepts me. Sad to say, but in the past few months, I think I've been closer to her than ever with my ex-wife. What allowed Bob to go from broken and in shambles to my life is now great? And I have this relationship that looks nothing like my marriage, that is so much better, so much healthier. What allowed him to go from that pain to that success in the span of a year? Bob changed the way he related to himself. And it changed how he related to his children, how he related to his boss and his coworkers and his job, how he related to this new partner. And everything starts to spiral upwards from there. Everything starts to snowball in a positive way when you improve your relationship with yourself, when you learn to talk to yourself kindly and deal with your emotions effectively. Improving your relationship with yourself takes you through 4 distinct phases, and I'm going to share those with you in just a moment. If you recognize any of this in yourself, any patterns of tyranny or anarchy, or just that your relationship with yourself is not that great and you'd like to make it better, join me in my free masterclass. I'm going to give you the step-by-step tools you need to get to that place of finding happiness, peace, and love again. You'll find the link in the video description below. Inside that free masterclass, I'm going to teach you how to use mindfulness, neuroscience, and a systems-based approach to transform your relationship with yourself, and through that, everything else in your life. If you watch the masterclass and you start implementing the step-by-step process that I teach you there, what you're going to find is that you go through 4 really distinct phases of healing. They're hopelessness, not a fun phase, anger, grief, and then peace. And what's really interesting about these phases is that they are actually the changes in your nervous system state. Right? They're actually created by the way your nervous system regulates. So this graphic is one of my favorites. It's from Ruby Jo Walker, and I'm using it here with her permission. She shows you in this chart how the nervous system goes from a grounded state into a fight or flight state, all the way up into a freeze or shutdown state, and then how it comes back down to a grounded state. And so I go into more detail on this in the masterclass, but I'll give you the basics here. When we don't feel safe for any reason, our nervous system automatically starts to go into a fight or flight response. Right? And you're familiar with that. That's anxiety, that's anger, that's I need to run away and get safe, or I need to fight back and protect myself. But when you're going through a divorce, the threat doesn't go away. And when you don't have a good relationship with yourself, a lot of times the threat is actually inside of you. The danger is coming from your own emotions, from your own cruel or unkind thoughts about yourself. So this danger is with you. You can't fight it. You can't run from it. It's there and it's coming with you everywhere you go. And so the brain actually goes into a freeze state. That's what happens when we feel trapped, when we can't fight back and there's nowhere to run. And that freeze state is characterized by hopelessness. And so most of the men I work with in the early stages, that's how they're feeling, right? They're having a hard time imagining peace and happiness after divorce. They're having an impossible time imagining love or dating or even thinking about trusting a woman again. In that freeze state, it is really difficult, if not impossible, to see the future, to imagine good things for yourself. And there's been a lot of research that shows the parts of the brain that can actually visualize the future and our sense of time actually changes in a freeze state. So as you start rebuilding your relationship with yourself, what you're doing as you're learning to deal effectively with emotions and talk to yourself with more compassion and respect, you're taking away that internal threat. You're making it safer to be inside of your own brain, inside your own body. You're making it safer to be alone with yourself. And as it gets safer, you don't need that freeze state so much. And you'll start to move back out of it. But you'll notice in this chart that it doesn't go from freeze, from that red zone down to the green zone. You have to pass through fight or flight. So as you start to come out of hopelessness, people get angry. And I see this all the time. My clients will go from depression and despair to anger at their ex-wife, anger at the system, anger at women. And I am so excited when I see them start to get angry. Often it scares them. They'll come to me and be like, uh-oh, something's wrong. This is a setback. No, this is progress. Right? You have to go back through fight or flight to get grounded. So we go from hopelessness into anger. And anger is a lot of the fire that pulls us out of hopelessness. And now, yes, I can see a future and I didn't deserve this and it's not right. And I'm going to fight for my right to be happy, for my right to be healthy, for my right to be loved. And then as we move back through that anger and process it, and you continue to improve that relationship with yourself, right? So you get better at dealing effectively with your emotions without suppressing them or overindulging in them. You start improving that self-talk, your self-image, the way you speak to yourself in your mind. We start to get into a grounded nervous system state. It becomes safe to be you. And as that happens, now we finally have room to process the grief of the divorce because it's sad, right? What happened, no matter the circumstances, we know one thing. We had two people who wanted to connect with each other. And over the years, and for many various reasons, were unable to do so, right? Or they lost that connection. And there is grief there in every single case. Once people's nervous systems get regulated, they have to grieve the loss of what happened and the sadness as they look back and say, wow, knowing what I know now, relating to myself in a healthier way, now I understand how I could have related to her differently, how she could have related to me differently. And you start to see how both of you missed each other because you didn't know how to be kind to yourselves or deal well with your own emotions. And so how could you possibly have offered those things to your partner? Right? And so then we have to feel the grief. But through that grieving, we can process that emotion and start to arrive in this place of peace and energy and happiness. And from there, that connection into new relationships becomes not only possible, but inevitable. Because when you're in a calm, grounded nervous system state, you're attractive. People feel good around you because you feel good, you feel safe. And our body language, our tone of voice, all of these subtle parts of human communication communicate that to the people around us, and people enjoy being with you. So when you improve your relationship with yourself and you bring your nervous system down to this grounded state, you're naturally going to find yourself engaging in healthier, happier relationships. Thank you so much for watching today. Don't forget to go check out the masterclass, get the step-by-step process to do this work, and I will see you guys in the next video.